What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It's your boy Adam Perez back once again with a brand new video review as we're set to get into Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, episode number 6, ladies and gentlemen, as we wind up having ourselves a brand new episode this past Friday. And man, if you ask me, this is probably one of my favorite episodes of the season. I was glued to the TV the entire time as we got some incredible pacing in here, some amazing battle sequences. Shout out to just those that edited and filmed this particular episode also, and a fantastic sort of cliffhanger and big ramifications at the end of this episode that honestly got me perked up out of my seat, as I was already on the edge of my seat certainly watching this, in regards to how brilliantly it was certainly written, whether that be from the battle to some of the strategic decisions from some of the characters we wind up having in this episode that really flipped the script, if you will. It was just a very back and forth when it comes to who's winning, who's losing in here. Just great back and forth for the pacing of this episode with incredible action, and again, the money maker that is in fact the way that they ended off this particular episode. It literally leads me into next week thinking to myself, who's surviving this? Like, who actually is going to escape and come out of the rubble? Are there any survivors? Is this just a huge monumental moment during this time period of Middle Earth that really sort of changes the trajectory of the future, certainly going forward? It definitely felt like it had huge ramifications, especially when it comes to Mount Doom. And man, I cannot wait. I really love this series. I think it's really picked up its momentum. If you thought maybe the first couple of episodes were kind of slow, look, I think that's just J.R.R. Tolkien's style of writing, right? Really establishing these characters, the world that we're in, giving them time to breathe, getting us emotionally attached and understand these characters. And while it may not be huge battle sequences every week, I honestly think the payoff that we wind up getting in this episode is due to the amazing storytelling ability that we've had so far. So there are elements of Tolkien's writing I can definitely feel in here, as it certainly focuses on other things besides just being a big sort of spectacle when it comes to action and drama. And I think this was a perfect example of that here in this week's episode. So brilliant stuff, great focus on some characters, learning about them even further. But yeah, man, I was really impressed. When it comes to the action sequences, you know, just the planning that they come up with, the humans of the Southlands, in regards to how to trap the orcs within their village, getting the opportunity to see Arondir really step up and have people kind of appreciate what Arondir is certainly doing in regards to saving these people, right? Whether that be dropping an entire tower on top of the orcs, keeping them trapped within this particular village. He definitely certainly did his part in here. And the fact that we have Adar and his orcs that are even smarter to maybe come up with an additional side plan in regards to seeing them switch out some of their orcs for some of the human lives that have kind of bent the knee to the darkness and to the orcs, and utilizing them and saying, you know what, let's dress them up as orcs and fight amongst their own people. And just that realization of, you know, the humans thinking we're victorious and then realizing, oh my god, we've slain our own people. Heart-wrenching stuff, man. Heart-wrenching stuff. Just when you think you have victory and grasp and are celebrating, only to come to find out you've been killing your own, and then the orcs have an actually second attack behind them waiting to go. Just brutal stuff, man, to the point of I honestly thought Bronwyn wasn't going to make it out of this episode. I thought that they were going to get rather ballsy and maybe kill her off, if you will. Probably because I feel like we've seen Arondir and Theo, for the most part, talking amongst each other, getting to know each other a little bit better. I did think they had some great moments in here. I thought to myself, man, is Theo going to be stuck with Arondir trying to raise him? But I think it's just one of those things that shows you they have no problems in keeping you on the edge of your seat and make you kind of worry about each of these characters, because I honestly had no idea that Bronwyn, if she was going to survive this or not. And just seeing Arondir in here with his incredible action sequence against the big ogre or the giant orc he had to face, almost seamless in regards to just the editing choices, the long sort of one shots, if you will, seeing Arondir just tossed to the side or thrown into objects or jumping onto the creature's back and things like that. Just a really great continuous shot, and you can catch where the edits are, but they're almost so seamless. It was just really beautifully handled in here, if you ask me. So I thought that the action was top par, was honestly the top standard here in this week's episode. And then last but not least, the idea of Mount Doom rising, getting the opportunity to see the volcano or the mountain exploding at the end of this, as we come to see them, the human that did bend the knee to Adar in here, he actually wind up having the key, the sword himself at the very end, as he winds up using it to unlock it, which in turn it looks like draws down some of the wall to empty out the dam or the river and let this water just flow, if you will. For a second there, a part of me thought that the village and everything under there was going to be completely flooded out. I thought they were literally going to have a huge tsunami come towards them. What I didn't expect was to find out that this is part of the Orcs' plan the entire time, to have them flood these tunnels that they have built all throughout the Southland, only to discover the tunnel leads directly into the mountain itself, having all this water rush in, meet with the magma lava underneath this particular mountain, and just cause a huge Hiroshima explosion. It feels like, almost feels like Pompeii all over again, in regards to the destructive nature that this mountain is in fact now creating, as it literally floods this land with ash and lava and fire. And you quickly come to see how this mountain and this Southland sort of now forms and creates itself into the land it eventually does become to be known as Mordor, and this being Mount Doom, where the future Ring of Power will in fact not only be forged but also destroyed. So massive implications here at the end of this episode to really draw us and make those further connections into the future when it comes to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So amazing stuff, man. Amazing stuff. They blew me away here. And again, the fact that there's really not too much character development, because you've already spent it in the past few episodes building that, they still managed to give us great scenes. Like, one of my favorite scenes in here is the Adar and Galadriel confrontation that we wind up getting. We've got some quick honorable mentions for Asildo along with Theo in here as well, and to even get the opportunity to see Arondir and Bronwyn's relationship grow a little bit further. They continue to confirm their relationship, or at least the love that they have for each other, to the point of Arondir kind of giving the signals of like, hey, after this is all done, I want you and me to go ahead and create this life, and not just you and me, but you, me, and Theo together, certainly as a family. So you clearly get to see how much Arondir truly does care about Bronwyn and her family, and what they would like to create for themselves going forward. Have they managed to survive this Mount Doom explosion? It almost feels like terraforming at this point. It does make me wonder, in next week's episode, who actually comes out of this alive, and will they be able to have the family that Arondir certainly wants? It'll be very fascinating to see how that works out. And speaking of Arondir and Bronwyn, she gives him, or he gives her, these seeds called Afrin Seeds, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Arondir explains that this is sort of like an elven custom to go ahead and plant these seeds before a battle, in regards to planting new life when death is certainly approaching them, sort of thing. And I'm assuming the Afrin Seeds that he winds up giving to Bronwyn in this episode are also Afrin Seeds that we see Adar maybe planting in the very beginning of this episode, to connect the idea that they are in fact elves, or they certainly were elves at one point in time. So I'm assuming those are the seeds that Adar was certainly planting, because honestly, before even catching that line with Arondir and Bronwyn, when I saw Adar planting that stuff, for some reason, I don't know why, I thought he was planting like Uruk-hai soldiers, right? Like when I think back to Lord of the Rings and I see them digging up these soldiers and things like that, it's the Uruk-hai that have been like buried for years, sort of thing. I was kind of under the impression that maybe that's what Adar was planting there, like creating life in the soil, so that thousands of years later, when they're actually dug up and buried, this is what we have. But I don't believe that's the case now, going back and revisiting this particular episode. But we do see what seems to be influences of the Uruk-hai here in this storyline with Adar, as Adar refers to themselves as Uruks. We get to learn actually a lot from Arondir and Galadriel here in this episode. I thought they had a really great conversation, as we come to find out that or at least according to Galadriel, she believes that Adar and his orcs were elves that were taken by Morgoth, tortured and twisted, now referred to as the Moriandir. So she believes that they are referred to as the Moriandir, but Adar says, hey, we prefer to be referred to as the Uruks. And they really refer to them sort of as the first orcs. So you really get the opportunity to see how far back of a life Adar certainly has had, along with the orcs, who have been twisted and tortured by the power of Morgoth, and they're certainly still there. And I find it really interesting too to kind of see the hatred that Galadriel has for the Moriandir. And yet you also have Adar on the other side, who's making justifications of, why do you hate us? We are the same as you, right? Like, we were once elves. We have a heartbeat. We have names. We have lives of our own. And just because of the fact that we got caught up in this darkness and got tortured and twisted to become this thing, does not mean that we are no longer that thing. And it is fascinating to see just how much Galadriel over the years has seen so much levels of darkness, for her to come at Adar in that sense of saying, hey, I'm going to kill every person like you. I'm going to leave you for last so you can see me kill your fellow folk. And then I'm going to kill you after you've watched me kill everybody else. I think it just goes to show you just how touched she has been by the darkness. And despite the fact that the person she's talking to is an elf, just very much who has done dark things and really twisted and terrible things, she's clearly not given the same levels of freedom and empathy, if you will, or even sympathy towards what Adar is certainly spewing out there, to the point of Galadriel almost cutting off his head before she certainly pulled back from that brink. So really great eye-opening experiences, I think, for Adar, along with Galadriel here in this particular episode as well. And he even kind of talks about his pushback that he had against Sauron, which I guess this kind of clears up the fact that Adar is not Sauron whatsoever. The fact that he mentions that Sauron survived at one point in time, headed north in an attempt to try and find this dark power that he wasn't quite able to grasp for himself. So I do think that's an eye-opening revelation for Galadriel to know she was kind of on his trail. She was kind of following exactly the trail that she picked up on was in fact the right one. And if it honestly wasn't for the mutiny by her people and being drawn away from that, who knows what she certainly could have found. But I do think that he at least gives her an understanding as to what the history of Sauron was certainly like, and maybe gives her a new starting point, if you will. I thought it was actually pretty cool that Arondir switched out the key, the sword, for the axe that we see revealed at the very end. How he had time to go ahead and do that, I don't know, but he managed to certainly pull it off. And just seeing him egg on also Halbrand was rather fascinating. You know, Halbrand continues to have a big mystery in regards to his life, but I think Adar maybe sheds some light on it. You know, the fact that he doesn't remember Halbrand, or maybe he does, but he's like getting under his skin, asking, you know, did I hurt somebody that you loved? Was it a wife? Did I take a child away from you? Halbrand really keeping his secrets to himself. and not really letting us kind of get inside. So Halbrand is continuing to grow into a mysterious character that I definitely want to learn a little bit more about. But getting the opportunity to see him, Galadriel, and Adar in a sequence together was actually some of my favorite scenes that we wind up getting here in this particular week's episode. And when it comes to Halbrand and Galadriel, I do like their teaming up here. I am kind of curious as to what their relationship is meant to turn into. I don't want to automatically suggest that there's like a sexual tension between these two characters, but at the end, when they have left Adar's side and they're sitting together and they're contemplating, Galadriel realizes just how far down the darkness she certainly has kind of fallen, and winds up appreciating Halbrand for pulling her back. But it's not after Halbrand thanks her also for pulling him from that particular brink. And I think he says something along the lines of, working alongside you and having fight alongside you, it kind of makes me look at things in a different perspective. Him thinking that he would never find hope, I guess is the word that I'm certainly looking for, and he tends to find that when fighting beside her. So I do wonder if that's a sense of him letting her know, hey, I'm attracted to you and you bring sort of this good side out of me, or if he's at least just hinting at the idea that before he didn't have any hope and now he certainly does, that there's a potential there. So I am kind of curious to see what happens for Halbrand, and the fact that he's been announced as Lord Halbrand and the King of the Southlands now, that he's got the Southlanders kneeling before him. It's putting the cart before the horse, right? In the sense of, maybe are we getting too ahead of ourselves here? I feel like there's more to Halbrand than he's not letting on. I mean, look, if he's the true and rightful king, that's great and all, but us not knowing his backstory, and now we are branding him as king. Something feels fishy, man. Something feels fishy when it comes to Halbrand. That there's a much bigger story here that I think Galadriel and them are not quite ready to certainly hear. So I am fascinated by that as well. But great stuff in regards to Galadriel, along with Halbrand, as Adar is captured. But as we quickly see by the end of this episode, he does in fact manage to escape. So I am expecting more from him along with Halbrand and their past also. Let's see here. Quick honorable mentions for Asildo. Welcome to Middle Earth, man. This is now that you were on the ship, you are now a horseman, a rider for Numenor. It seems as though he has bigger plans certainly about to happen. I really did enjoy his conversation with Galadriel on the ship, as we get the opportunity to see those two kind of introduced. And I believe he is officially a part of Galadriel's company to head into the mountains to kind of follow the remaining orcs that wind up escaping here. So it definitely seems as though Asildo is going to get that opportunity to work rather closely with Galadriel. And I'll be interested to see like what their friendship or partnership certainly turns out to be. Just because from the trilogy alone, from Lord of the Rings, I wasn't aware if they even knew of each other or what their relationship was certainly like. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how close Asildo and Galadriel certainly might have gotten. And even props to Isildur's friend, who just put out some beatings and was destroying some of these orcs. It clearly looks as though his training with Galadriel in the previous episode certainly paid off, as he's mowing these guys down and certainly saving some of his friends. But when it comes to Asildo, welcome to Middle Earth. I loved his things. I loved his quote of like, the mountains are nice. Like, here you are at a brand new land. What do you appreciate so far? And he's like, yeah, the mountains. And I gotta say, man, like a Lord of the Rings show or series is not complete without like an army of horses galloping along sort of like the open plains of Middle Earth. It really does get my blood pumping and goosebumps, honestly. It just reminds me of like the Return of the King moment when he gives this great speech on top of this hill before the rest of the horses just charge into battle sort of thing. thing. If I can get just horses charging into battle with like the white steed at the front just really going at it, man, let's go. I'm ready to get on a horse myself and go into battle with Galadriel. They get me so pumped. And then quick side honorable mention also to Theo in this episode, who I actually really appreciate the fact that they teased his pull to the darkness, you know, the sense of loss that he feels now that he no longer has the sword of Sauron there. It almost is like a comparison to like a crack fiend who needs that extra hit, you know, like you've had a taste of it because he's got some scars on his arm for, you know, activating the sword and things like that. It's kind of bonded himself to it in a certain extent, you know. He kind of craves having that power again, and it's probably a good thing that Theo wasn't kept around the sword even longer than he certainly was, or that draw would have been even more powerful. But I kind of dig the fact that Theo still has that sense of loss, you know, like he's going through some sort of deprivation of not being able to get his fix. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And the idea that he opens up the cloth and realizes the sword's not in there, but it's an axe, was my oh shit moment. Like I literally got up out of my chair, or like sat up in my couch looking at my girlfriend like, oh shit, where's the sword? And then all of a sudden you see the key activating the water, and then the water into the mountain, and then Mountain Doom rising with its huge explosion. Man, it was unlike anything I certainly was expecting in the episode, and just truly blew me away. But I continue to love the lengths of these episodes, an hour plus. Amazon Prime is spoiling me with this damn Lord of the Rings series. They truly are. And I'm, you know, I don't want to say I'm surprised that the Lord of the Rings series is getting better streaming numbers than House of the Dragon. I guess it probably did surprise me, just because I know the huge success of Game of Thrones. But there is, again, I don't want to compare the two, but it does feel different each season. House of the Dragon and Rings of Power feel like two different shows to me, just because of how the material in which they're adapting, how those particular writers tell their stories, and the worlds that they certainly have created just feel vastly different. But I think they're both doing incredible jobs as making us feel very immersed in that world. And Rings of Power is doing some incredible things. But those are just some of my thoughts, guys, in regards to the Rings of Power episode number 6. These are just simply my A+ opinions, but at the end of the day, guys, I want to know yours. What did you guys think of episode 6 of the Rings of Power? Let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below. And listen, if there's anything that I missed, character moments, storyline details, Easter eggs that you guys want to further continue to talk about, let your thoughts be known in the comment section box, and we'll definitely continue this conversation until next week's episode. But until then, guys, do me a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.